This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And this half hour being brought to you by our good friend. Inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the all-important Sunbury Motors guarantee. Terrific service department that backs it up every step of the way, whether it's quick lane, inspections, routine, difficult. They handle it all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. And it is always a pleasure to sit down and talk with good friends, and that is Gerry Dulac. Welcome back, my friend.
Steve, it's always a treat to talk to you, and I was looking forward to it to brighten up my first day back at training camp.
Yes, training camp. Before I get to training camp, the Scheffler run of winning the PGA, winning the Open Championship to go with everything else he's done this year. And I also found it was interesting that the ratings were up for the Open this year. Now that's not the Tiger Woods influence there, but is there a growing popularity for how this guy plays and how he handles himself, in your opinion?
You know, what's funny about it all, Steve, is I think there's a growing appreciation by leaps and bounds for the guy, but I don't know that it has a direct correlation. It doesn't have the Tiger effect because he's not that kind of guy. He's that kind of player. I'm not calling him Tiger, but he's just not that kind of guy. He's not Phil Mickelson. He's not Jordan Spieth. He's so consistent and efficient and basically unemotional and level-headed. Doesn't say anything too outrageous or stupid. He's very conciliatory, and he's Gomer Pyle is what he is to a degree. And I know the young people won't get that one, but you and I certainly will. And but I don't know that he increases the popularity of the game or the viewing of the game. Other than to see maybe like how much is he going to win by, but he's so methodically consistent. It's shocking. I mean, week in and week out, and he treats every tournament he plays the same. Doesn't matter if it's Waste Management or it's the British Open or the Open. Excuse me, I don't want to call it the British Open anymore. I'm sure. Look, those other ones, the majors, mean more because that will establish his legacy. But to be honest, I really don't think he cares about his legacy. Maybe at some point he will, and maybe quietly he does. I don't think he does. I think and that's why he's so good. They talk in football about cornerbacks need to have a short memory because they're going to get beat. You got to forget about it. Right. He has a short memory the other way, which is he wins a tournament and he lets go of it, and he goes on to the next one and he goes out and treats it the same way. Goes out to try to win. Just because that's just the way he's wired. And so, when he made that comment before the tournament, Steve, about, the satisfaction of winning and saying, okay, is this all there is? And he's satisfied for 3 or 4 minutes and then he moves on. That's why that's why he's so consistent. He doesn't get caught up in the adulation. The converse of that is Rory McIlroy, whose Masters hangover lasted pretty much up until the Open Championship. And he openly admitted it. And so, that's the other side of what Scottie Scheffler is about, and that's why Scottie just gets rid of that stuff, and he moves on, and he's successful week in and week out.
And again, I've only been around McIlroy a couple of times. I thought when he won the Masters, it would relax him and he'd win more tournaments. Instead, he acted as if the world had fallen on his shoulders, and I didn't get it, and I still don't get it.
You know, his countrymen got to the point where they were giddy about him finally winning the Masters. You know, Paul McGinley, who I like a great deal on the set of Live From on Golf Channel.
Me too.
Saying he thought maybe he could win all 4 majors this year and go on to win 10, 12 more majors. And Padraig Harrington basically said the same thing, you know, that the pressure's off now. Look out. He's going to go on a run of winning majors. And I think the thing that I appreciated from Rory is he admitted that it just meant so much that he climbed that mountain after all those years. And after climbing the mountain, he was ready to come down and, you know, enjoy it. And at some point in time, find another mountain to climb, however long it took. And it's obviously taken several months. Look, he played well in the Scottish Open. He played well in the Open Championship. But the motivation he had early in the year when he won Bay Hill, Arnold Palmer, and then he won the Players' Championship, and then he won the Masters, obviously all 3 elevated events. After doing that, that's the kind of run he could get on. But once he hit that peak, he was coming down, and he stayed down because that was like the ultimate for him after all those years of frustration of never winning the green jacket. It wasn't about the Grand Slam. It was about the green jacket. And it just wiped him out emotionally.
Okay, so at least wanted to talk about golf. Now we can get to the football part of it because you know how much I love the sport. So the Steelers get into camp. They signed Watt. Garrett had set a bar. Watt now extends the bar a bit. Now we'll see what happens with Micah Parsons. Was there any doubt in your mind that the Steelers would sign Watt? So this is really no surprise.
Yeah, never a doubt, Steve. And what the Steelers were facing, Steve, was a business decision, a smart business decision. Do we want to give a guy who's 31 a 5-year deal for whatever? Let's just use the number he was looking at, which is $36 million a year, 5 years, $180 million contract. Do they really want to do that? They wanted to sign TJ. They give deals to their stars as much for what they think they can still do as what they have done for them in the past. And so there was never a question whether they wanted to sign him. The only question was going to be, how long is this going to drag out, and can they come to some common ground? And I think they did. You're reading all these national reports that T.J. Watt is now the highest paid non-quarterback in football history. Well, that's really not true, Steve.
Right.
He signed a 4-year deal. They want to pay the agency. The agents paint it as a 3-year extension, and they get their guys in the national media who they trade information with to put out the extension because it makes the agent look good. Look at what I was able to get from my client. The reality is he signs a brand new 4-year deal, and the deal is the deal. And it's a 4-year deal that averages $36 million and some change, which puts him behind Myles Garrett's contract. He gets $108 fully guaranteed through the first 3 years of the contract. So it's a great deal for T.J. Watt. But then it becomes, it's like slicing bread. I mean, which side do you want? You want to paint it as it's an extension? Go right ahead. But that's not the reality of it. The reality of it is it's a new 4-year deal. They're happy with it. He's thrilled with it. They got him here before camp, which was important. And, but there was never a question that whether he was going to be here. Now, with Minkah Fitzpatrick, you knew that was, I was told a month earlier that was, I knew it was a possibility. There was never a real strong possibility with TJ, despite the stuff you hear fans say, trade him and get 2 number ones. That was a bunch of baloney.
Yeah. How interested are you in what the offensive line looks like especially with a quarterback who had relied so much in his career on mobility but doesn't quite have that anymore?
You know, Steve, that's one of the things we're going to find out, and there seems to be a lot of angst about the offensive line. And I don't quite get it, because you're talking about a line that has 2 number 1 picks, yep, a number 2 pick, a free agent guard in Isaac Seumalo, and a second-year guy who played a lot last year, Mason McCormick, who they really like. So your 2 tackles are number 1 picks each of the previous 2 years, and your center was a number 2 pick last year. So they have, a pedigree, a young pedigree on that line that's very promising. The big question mark, look, Troy Fautano, in the brief time that he was in training camp before he got hurt, and then he came back and he played 1 preseason game, instantly they said he was their second-best lineman. Well, this kid's a stud. Now, I know he's had some injury concerns, and look, it's only been 1 year, and hopefully that won't continue. But that kid's a stud, and they think Broderick Jones is immensely talented. They would just like to see him mature kind of professionally, personally, take his job and his profession just a little more seriously. But they think the world of Broderick Jones, and moving him to left tackle, which is more of his natural position. I know it's the most important position. That's going to be the thing everyone's going to want to see, because it wasn't exactly like he was a dominant player at right tackle, which, of course, is where Fautano will play this year. But they've paid attention to that line with high draft picks, and, none of whom have played more than 2 years. So to me, it's like, give them, 3 of them have played 1 year. One of them, Fautano, really hasn't even played a year. So I think there's a lot of promise on that offensive line, and that's the way they're looking at it.
See, Fautano to me is the key with all this, because I'm with you. I see not a little bit great potential in him, and I think they have a chance. They have a chance to have an excellent offensive line with the existing pieces and the addition of him. See, I think he becomes the key to all this.
Well, I would agree with you, and of course, you're always looking at your tackles, and the left tackle being the most important one. But with Fautano, and the way they view him, and as good as he is, and if he continues that, I mean, he's going to be a Pro Bowl player in a short amount of time. This is a powerful man who can move. He's very explosive, and to your previous question, Steve, about Aaron Rodgers, I mean, that's going to be a big deal. How much protection can they give a 41-year-old quarterback, especially for a team that likes to run the ball? Look, if they want to drop and pass pro, that's fine. But they still want their offensive line to run block. So, that's the key. If you want to do just one or the other, you're probably going to sacrifice one. If you want to just run block, you might sacrifice pass pro. If you want to pass pro, you might sacrifice run block. But the key will be trying to get them to do both, while making sure your 41-year-old quarterback doesn't go out on the 5th play of the game.
I realize that you're covering the Steelers. Can you figure out at all what the Bengals are attempting to do with their defensive ends?
No. They needed to pay Trey Hendrickson. The Bengals have been the one thing they're trying to do is pay their offensive stars. And they figure, okay, if we can't stop them, then we will outscore them. And it's one of the problems teams have when you got the best receiver in the league, arguably, if not the best quarterback, certainly in the top 3 in the conversation with Joe Burrow. And then you got another receiver like T. Higgins. And so, they need, though, to invest in their offensive line. But their defense is, teams went through them last year. I was surprised when the Bengals paid the money they did for their offensive guys, but they're already losing guys on defense, and if they whatever is going to happen with Trey Hendrickson, to me, you can understand the money he wants. Look, I mean, if there was arbitration in football, he would get what he wants when they stack up his numbers. But there is no arbitration in football, and it's going to be up to Mike Brown and Katie Brown.
Right, exactly. As you know, I was not big on the draft,
Right.
Saying, I was in the category of, excuse me, I don't get it. But now they're trying to put clauses in the contract because of what he did off the field. It's like, he's the only number one outside. I mean, and I think they drafted him that leverage with Hendrickson. I mean, I think you got to give them credit. I think they outsmarted themselves.
Yeah, that's not an easy thing to do. Yeah, I didn't really like that draft choice. I thought that they were maybe going to go Derek Harmon, whom the Steelers picked. But yeah, I don't. For years they've always drafted very curious. They never invested. Now this is going back a little bit. They never invested a lot in their scouting department, and they've not been a team historically. It's gotten better lately. That's drafted very well. And made good personnel decisions. But when you do get receivers like they got, obviously, they drafted him and they drafted Joe Burrow. That's helped them. But they have to, they spent a lot of time drafting cornerbacks over the years and not paying attention to their front seven, especially their linebacker crew. Their linebacker crew historically has been weak. And while paying a bunch of attention to the back end of their defense, and a lot of those guys are gone. So, I don't know what goes in with the ins and outs of the Bengals, but as we all know, they've always been historically frugal, and they still are. Yeah, he's going to spend a lot of time on the football field. They drafted him for a reason. You and I have talked about this, for the last actually 2 years, where I've told you their number one priority above all else has been retooling and rebuilding that defensive line. Because other than Cam Hayward, and they've made some draft picks, third round pick. Keanu Benton is a nice piece. He was a second round pick. But you have to start using your top picks like they did on the offensive line with Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu. You have to start doing that with your defensive line. And I wouldn't stop at Derek Harmon this year. I would do it again next year, although that might be a different story with a quarterback. Well, that's a tale for another time. But, they let go of Larry Ogunjobi, so automatically there's a spot on the starting line, on their three-man line, and that's going to be Derek Harmon. As Tom Donahoe once said, they didn't bring him in to lead the band at halftime, and so he's going to play. And there's no easing him into it. And I'm curious to see how good that kid is. I've seen the tape on him. I know his measurables and everything. But I'd be curious to see, always with a defensive lineman, how disruptive he can be. And Cam Hayward, and look, he's 36, going to be 37. And they can't keep relying on Cam having an all-pro season like he did last year, which is, at his age was really remarkable. So I think it was a necessary move. And, that'll be one of the keys. Obviously, everybody's going to see what can Aaron Rodgers do. I think Derek Harmon on the defensive line and a player very well, Caleb Johnson, what can he do for the running game? Because eventually he'll be their back next year. And I'm sure as this year goes on, he'll end up being their feature back because I don't think Jaylen Warren is really a feature back. He's just a nice complementary back. So those to me, and look, they got so many new players, 11 new starters, half their team, after starting unit is brand new. So there's so many different faces. In that transition, we'll see how that works. DK Metcalf, how's he going to work on the outside with Aaron Rodgers? I mean, that's another thing you'll want to see. But so there's a couple interesting things to watch here at training camp without question.
And then you guys Gainwell a complimentary player as well.
Right, absolutely. I liked it with him when he was with the Eagles.
Yep.
He'll be their third back. I don't know how they're going to use him. But obviously they'll want Caleb Johnson to, as soon as he's ready, even if he's not ready, to get into that ball game and get some time. Because, like I said, eventually by next year, Jaylen Warren was just a one-year tender, so they'll let him go after this year, and Caleb Johnson will be their running back.
Thank you. you so much for the time. I know it's a busy time, and you gave us some of that today, and I appreciate it so much.
Well, Steve, I always enjoy talking to you, and I'll enjoy talking to you once that Penn State football season begins so I can get kind of some of the lowdown and inside from you.
You got it. You know you get a little bit more off the side, too, okay?
I know that, man.
Thanks, man.
Always good chatting with you, my friend.
Thanks, Gerry. The great Gerry Dulac, one of the best in the business. And this half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.